Humanity Turns the Tide. How Humans Altered the Course of a Losing War Part 1. The Desperate Alliance. The Great Hall of Terminus Prime had never felt so cold. Admiral Torvax stood at the center of the circular chamber, his forearms hanging loose at his sides. Around him sat the representatives of 7 species. 7 civilizations that had joined together 40 years ago to fight a common enemy. 7 peoples who were now staring at defeat. "We have lost the Varus system," Torvax said. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. "The third homeworld to fall. 18 billion souls." No one spoke. The holographic display behind him showed the map of Coalition space. Red zones marked Krath territory. 40 years ago, the red had been a small patch on the edge of the galaxy. Now it covered nearly half the map. "At our current rate of losses," Torvax continued, "total defeat will occur within 18 months. Perhaps less." Councilor Mivith watched the faces around the chamber. She was young for a diplomat, barely 60 years old. But she had spent her entire career studying one thing: solutions that others could not see. "There must be something we can do," said Representative Gorath of the Melkari. His insect-like body clicked with nervous energy. "We can build more ships, train more soldiers. With what resources?" Admiral Torvax replied. "The Krath control 60% of the mining systems. Our shipyards are working at maximum capacity. We are producing ships, yes, but the Krath produce them faster." "Then we negotiate," another voice said. "We seek peace." Torvax turned to face the speaker. "The Krath do not negotiate. They do not make peace. They consume. They expand. They have destroyed 11 civilizations before us. They will destroy us too, unless we find a way to stop them." Silence filled the chamber again. Mivith felt her heart beating faster. She had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it. But now that it had arrived, she felt fear. She stood up. "I have a proposal." Every eye in the chamber turned to her. Admiral Torvax frowned. "Councilor Mivith, this is a military council. You are a junior diplomat." "I am aware of my position, Admiral, but I have information that may be useful." She walked to the holographic display and touched a control. The map shifted, zooming out to show a distant arm of the galaxy. A small yellow dot appeared. "This is a planet called Earth, home to a species called humans." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Representative Gorath leaned forward. "I have heard of them. They achieved interstellar travel only 20 years ago. They are primitive." "They are young," Mivith corrected. "There is a difference." Admiral Torvax crossed both sets of arms. "What could a primitive species possibly offer us? They have no fleet worth mentioning, no advanced weapons, no experience in galactic warfare." Mivith took a deep breath. "They have something more valuable. Something we have lost. And what is that?" "The will to survive." The chamber fell silent again. Mivith continued, her voice growing stronger. "I have spent 10 years studying human history. Their planet is harsh. Their evolution was brutal. They have fought wars among themselves for their entire existence. And in all that time, in all their history, they have never lost a war when fighting for survival. Not once. That means nothing," Gorath said. "Their wars were fought with primitive weapons on a single world." "The weapons do not matter," Mivith replied. "What matters is psychology. The Krath are efficient. They are coordinated. Their hive mind makes them perfect soldiers. But they have one weakness. They do not understand species that refuse to surrender." She touched the display again. Images appeared showing human history. Soldiers standing against impossible odds. Cities burning, but people rebuilding. Defeats turning into victories through sheer determination. When a Valoran fleet faces defeat, it retreats to preserve resources. When a Melkari army is surrounded, it surrenders to save lives. This is logical. This is reasonable. But humans... She paused. Humans fight harder when they are losing. They become more dangerous when they are cornered. They do not retreat. They do not surrender. They find a way to win, or they die trying. Admiral Torvax was quiet for a long moment. You are suggesting we ask primitives to save us. I am suggesting we ask humans to teach us how to survive. The debate lasted for hours. Many representatives argued against the proposal. It was shameful to seek help from a species so young. It was pointless to involve a civilization with no real military power. It was dangerous to bring unpredictable aliens into the war. But in the end, desperation won. The vote was close. 4 species in favor, 3 against. The coalition would send an envoy to Earth. Admiral Torvax approached Mivith after the session ended. "You will lead the delegation," he said. It was not a question. I expected as much. "I do not believe this will work," Torvax said. "I have fought the craft for 30 years. I have watched them destroy everything we built. I no longer believe in miracles." Mivith looked at the old admiral. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of countless defeats pressing down on him. "Perhaps that is exactly why we need the humans," she said. "We have forgotten how to believe." 3 days later, Mivith stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Bright Hope as it entered the strange region of space that humans called their own. Earth was a small planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. Nothing about it seemed special. But as they approached, Mivith noticed something. Human ships were everywhere. Small patrol vessels, merchant ships, research craft. The space around Earth was busy, alive with activity. These people had been in space for only 20 years, but they were expanding rapidly, building constantly, moving forward with an energy that Mivith had not seen in coalition species for decades. "Counselor," the ship's captain called. "We are being hailed by human authorities. They are asking our intentions." Mivith straightened her robes. "Tell them we come seeking an alliance. Tell them the galaxy needs their help." The captain hesitated. "They are asking why they should help us. They say they know nothing about our war." Mivith smiled sadly. "Tell them the truth. Tell them that if we fall, they will be next. The craft do not stop. They never stop. And eventually, they will come to Earth." There was a long pause. Then the human voice returned, speaking through the translation system. "Proceed to the following coordinates. Representatives will meet you." As the ship changed course, Mivith felt something she had not felt in years. A small spark of hope. Perhaps the humans would refuse to help. Perhaps they would be too weak to make a difference. Perhaps everything Mivith believed about them was wrong. But perhaps, just perhaps, she had found the key to winning an impossible war. The fate of 7 civilizations now rested on the response of a species that had barely learned to walk among the stars. It was madness. It was desperation. It was the only chance they had left. Humanity Turns the Tide. How Humans Altered the Course of a Losing War Part 2. The Human Response Commander Una Park had read the reports 3 times. Each time, she found herself more disturbed by what she saw. The aliens sitting across the conference table had traveled thousands of light years to ask for help. And looking at their data, she understood why the United Nations Space Command headquarters in Seoul was busy today. Officers moved through hallways with purpose. Screens displayed star charts and fleet positions. But all attention was focused on the delegation from the Valoran Coalition. Counselor Mivith had finished her presentation an hour ago. Now she sat quietly, watching the human officers discuss what they had heard. Her translator device hummed softly, converting the rapid Korean and English conversation into words she could understand. General Taiho Shin, the overall commander of human military forces, leaned back in his chair. He was an older man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had listened to the entire presentation without speaking. Now he turned to Commander Park. "What is your assessment?" Park stood and walked to the display screen. She was 38 years old, slim and tall, with the focused intensity of someone who spent most of her time thinking about problems others found impossible. "The Krath have 3 major advantages," she said. "Numbers, coordination, and predictability." Mivith's translator beeped. "Predictability is an advantage?" "For them, yes." Park changed the display to show Krath battle formations. Their hive mind allows perfect coordination. Every ship knows exactly what every other ship is doing. They fight as one organism. This makes them extremely effective in direct combat. "We know this," Mivith said. "It is why we are losing. But it also makes them rigid," Park continued. "They have used the same basic tactics for 40 years. They expect their enemies to fight in certain ways. When you do, they win. Their predictability is their strength because they have never faced an enemy who exploits it." Captain Do-won Beek spoke up from his seat near the window. He was a large man with scars on his hands from years of close combat. "They have been fighting species who follow rules. Honor codes. Military traditions, yes?" Mivith nodded slowly. "The Coalition has laws of warfare. We do not attack civilian targets. We do not use deception. We fight with honor." Beek smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "And how is that working for you?" "Captain," General Shin said quietly. "A warning." "I apologize," Beek said. He did not sound apologetic. "But I have studied these Krath. They do not follow rules. They do not care about honor. They use every advantage they can find. And you fight them with one hand tied behind your back." Mivith felt uncomfortable. "These are civilized principles. Without them, we are no better than the enemy." "You will be dead," Beek replied. "And the dead have no principles." Commander Park raised her hand to stop the argument. "The captain's point is valid, even if his delivery is harsh. The Krath have been winning because you fight the way they expect. You meet their fleets in open battle. You defend fixed positions. You retreat when outnumbered. Every action you take, they have seen before. What would you suggest?" Mivith asked. Park looked at General Shin. The older man nodded. "We would suggest," Park said, "that you stop fighting their war and start fighting yours." Over the next several hours, Park and her team outlined a completely different approach to warfare. They spoke of guerrilla tactics, where small forces attacked supply lines instead of main fleets. They explained psychological operations, using fear and confusion as weapons. They described something called total war doctrine, where every resource was directed toward victory, regardless of traditional limitations. Lieutenant Eun-ji Choi, a young communications specialist, demonstrated how human forces had used deception in their own history. False radio signals, fake ship signatures, entire phantom fleets that existed only as electronic ghosts. The Valaran delegation watched in growing amazement and horror. "You would lie to the enemy," Mivith said finally. "Deliberately deceive them." "We would do whatever is necessary to win," Park replied. "The Krath will not offer you mercy if you lose. Why should you limit yourself when they do not?" The meeting continued late into the night. By the time it ended, Mivith's understanding of humans had changed completely. They were not primitive. They were different. They saw warfare as a problem to be solved, not a ritual to be performed. They had no respect for traditions that led to defeat, and they were not afraid. That was what struck Mivith most. Every species in the coalition was afraid. 40 years of losing had broken their spirits. But these humans, who had no reason to join the fight, who could simply hide in their corner of the galaxy for a few more decades, they showed no fear at all. General Shin called a final meeting the next morning. Representatives from all major human governments attended via holographic link. The decision had to be made quickly. We cannot ignore this threat, Shin told the assembled leaders. The Krath will eventually reach us. It is better to fight them now, far from Earth, than to wait until they are at our doorstep. How many forces can we send? Asked the European representative. 50,000 volunteers initially. 200 ships. It is a small force, but it will be enough to test our theories. Commander Park spoke next. Our goal is not to match the Krath in numbers. We cannot do that. Instead, we will show the coalition how to fight asymmetrically. We will prove that the Krath can be defeated by an enemy who refuses to play by their rules. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would go to war. 3 weeks later, Counselor Miveth stood on the observation deck of the human flagship Resolute. Around her, 200 human warships formed into attack formations. They were small ships compared to coalition vessels, fast and maneuverable rather than heavily armored, built for hit-and-run attacks rather than line battles. Captain Beak joined her at the window. You look worried, Counselor. I am wondering if I have made a terrible mistake, Miveth admitted. I asked you to help us, but now I wonder if I have simply brought more people to die. Beak shook his head. We chose to come. Every person on this fleet is a volunteer. They know the risks. But why? This is not your war. Your planet is safe, for now. The captain was quiet for a long moment. Do you know what makes humans different from other species? It is not intelligence. It is not technology. It is the fact that we cannot ignore suffering. When we see others in pain, we feel it too. We cannot walk away. He turned to face her directly. Your people are dying. 7 civilizations are about to be erased from existence. And you came to us for help. How could we say no? On the bridge of the Resolute, Commander Park reviewed battle plans with her staff. She had spent weeks studying coalition tactics and Krath patterns. She had identified dozens of weaknesses that could be exploited. But she knew that theory meant nothing until it was tested in real combat. Lieutenant Choi approached her station. Commander, we are ready to enter coalition space. Park nodded. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Commander Park. We are about to enter a war that has been raging for 40 years. A war that our allies have been losing. But that changes now. We did not come here to fight the same way and lose the same way. We came here to turn the tide. She paused, looking at the stars ahead. The Krath have never faced humans before. They do not know what we are capable of. They will learn. And they will learn to fear us. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying the hopes of 7 civilizations toward an uncertain future. But for the first time in decades, those hopes were real. Humanity had joined the war. Humanity turns the tide. How humans altered the course of a losing war. Part 3. First Blood. The Varus system was dying. Admiral Torvax stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with tired eyes. Krath ships surrounded the system. 300 enemy vessels against his remaining 80. The mathematics of defeat were simple and unavoidable. Admiral, his communications officer called. The human fleet has arrived. Torvax turned to see 200 small ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They were tiny compared to his own vessels, barely visible on the tactical display. He felt his hope, which had briefly risen, collapse again. That is their help? He said quietly. Those small ships against the Krath Armada? A holographic image appeared on his bridge. Commander Una Park, her face calm and focused. "Admiral Torvax, I am Commander Park of the Human Expeditionary Force. We are here to assist." "With respect, Commander, I do not see how you can assist. Your ships are too small for direct combat. The Krath will destroy them in minutes." Park smiled slightly. "We do not intend to fight directly. Not yet. I need you to do something for me, Admiral." "What?" "Nothing." Torvax blinked. "I do not understand." "Hold your position. Do not engage the enemy. Do not retreat. Simply wait. Give us 6 hours." 6 hours to do what?" "To show you a different way to fight." The communication ended. Torvax looked at his officers, who seemed equally confused. But what choice did he have? His fleet was going to be destroyed anyway. He might as well see what the humans were planning. Captain Dohwan Beek led the first strike team. 20 fast attack ships, loaded with missiles and electronic warfare equipment. They did not fly toward the Krath main fleet. Instead, they curved around the edge of the system, heading for the supply convoy that kept the Krath ships fueled and armed. "Target in range," his pilot reported. "All ships. Weapons free." The attack was over in seconds. Missiles streaked out, destroying transport vessels before the Krath escorts could respond. By the time enemy fighters arrived, Beek's squadron was already gone. Jumping to a new position, across the system, similar attacks were happening. Human ships struck at communication relays, blinding Krath commanders. They hit fuel depots, leaving enemy ships stranded. They attacked sensor platforms, creating gaps in Krath detection networks. The Krath hive mind responded with confusion. For 40 years, enemies had attacked their main fleet. That was how wars were fought. But these humans were attacking everything except the main fleet. Supply lines were breaking. Communications were failing. The perfect coordination of the hive mind began to crack. On the bridge of the Resolute, Lieutenant Yoonji Choi worked at her station with intense concentration. She had spent weeks studying Krath communication protocols. Their hive mind used a complex network of signals that linked every ship, every drone, every soldier together. It was their greatest strength. It was also a vulnerability. "Commander, I am ready," Choi reported. Park nodded. "Begin." Choi activated her systems. False signals began flooding into Krath communication networks. Phantom ships appeared on their sensors. False orders contradicted real ones. For the first time in the history of the hive mind, individual units began receiving conflicting information. Admiral Torvax watched his tactical display in amazement. The Krath fleet, which had been moving in perfect formation toward his position, was now fragmenting. Ships were breaking off, chasing ghosts. Others were stopping, waiting for orders that never came. The perfect machine of the Krath military was stuttering. "What are they doing?" his first officer asked. "I do not know," Torvax replied. "But it is working." The humans struck again, this time at the Krath rear guard. Beek led his ships in a direct attack, hitting enemy vessels that were isolated and confused. It was not a fair fight. The humans attacked in groups, overwhelming single ships before moving to the next target. They used every advantage they could find, including some that Torvax considered dishonorable. At one point, a human ship broadcast a false surrender signal. When Krath vessels moved in to capture it, hidden missiles launched from debris fields, destroying 3 enemy cruisers. Torvax felt uncomfortable watching this. It violated every principle of warfare he had been taught, but it was effective. After 6 hours, the situation had transformed. The Krath had lost 40 ships. Their supply lines were wrecked. Their communications were chaos. And they had not been able to destroy a single human vessel. Park appeared on Torvax's bridge again. "Admiral, I believe the time is right for a combined attack. You want us to engage now?" The Krath are confused and scattered. Their coordination is broken. If we strike now, together, we can win this battle. Torvax hesitated. Every instinct told him to preserve his remaining ships, to retreat and fight another day. That was what the coalition had always done when facing bad odds. But looking at the tactical display, he saw something new. The odds were no longer bad. The humans had changed them. All ships, Torvax said slowly, prepare for attack. The combined fleet swept forward. Coalition vessels, built for direct combat, led the charge. Human ships darted around the edges, striking at any craft unit that tried to reorganize. It was messy and chaotic. Nothing like the ordered battles Torvax had fought before. It was beautiful. The craft broke. For the first time in living memory, a craft fleet abandoned a system it had been attacking. Ships jumped to hyperspace in disorder, leaving wreckage and confusion behind. On the Resolute, cheering erupted. UN officers embraced each other, celebrating the victory. Lieutenant Choi was crying, overwhelmed by the success of her communication assault. Even the normally stoic Captain Beak was smiling. Counselor Mivith watched the celebration with wonder. She had seen coalition victories before, but they had always been grim affairs. The survivors mourned the dead and worried about the next battle. These humans celebrated with pure joy, as if winning was something to be happy about rather than simply a temporary delay of defeat. Admiral Torvax requested permission to come aboard the Resolute. When he arrived, he walked straight to Commander Park. "How did you do this?" he asked. "We were outnumbered 3-1. We should have lost." "Numbers are only one factor in warfare," Park replied. "The Krath have more ships, but they fight in predictable ways. They rely on their hive mind for coordination. Take that away, and they are just individual units without direction." "You fight without honor," Torvax said. There was no accusation in his voice, just observation. "We fight to win," Park said. "Honor is a luxury for those who can afford to lose. Your people cannot afford to lose, Admiral. Neither can mine." Torvax was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone watching. He bowed to Commander Park in the traditional Valoran gesture of deep respect. "Teach us," he said. "Teach us how to fight like humans." Park bowed in return. "That is exactly what we intend to do." But even as they celebrated, intelligence reports were arriving from across the galaxy. The Krath High Command had noticed what happened at Vareth. They had analyzed the new tactics and the strange ships that used them. And they had made a decision. The humans were now a priority target. The real war was about to begin. Humanity turns the tide. How humans altered the course of a losing war. Part 4. The tide turns. Message from the Krath came without warning. Every communication system in coalition space received it at the same moment. A simple statement, translated into every known language. The humans will be destroyed. Any who shelter them will share their fate. Commander Una Park read the message in her quarters aboard the Resolute. She smiled. This was exactly what she had been waiting for. "They are scared," she told her senior staff at the morning briefing. "The Krath have never issued threats before. They have never needed to. But we hurt them at Vareth, and now they are scared." Captain Beak studied the intelligence reports. "They are moving significant forces toward our position. At least 500 ships, maybe more." "Good." Beak looked up. "Good? They are doing exactly what we want them to do." Park activated the holographic display. "For 40 years, the Krath have been spreading across coalition space like water, flowing wherever the defenses were weakest. They have been impossible to fight because they have been everywhere at once. But now they are concentrating their forces against us." Lieutenant Choi understood immediately. "They are creating a target." "Exactly. A large, concentrated force with extended supply lines. We have been waiting for an opportunity like this. Admiral Torvax had joined the briefing. Over the past months, he had become a regular presence at human planning sessions. He had also begun to change. The exhausted defeat in his eyes was fading, replaced by something that looked almost like hope. "What do you propose?" Yes, Park outlined Operation Ember. The plan was complex and risky. It required perfect timing and absolute commitment. It was the kind of plan that no coalition commander would ever have. Considered Dodd, it was also brilliant. The first phase was retreat. Human forces would fall back, making it appear that they were being overwhelmed by the Krath offensive. They would lose battles deliberately, abandoning systems they could have defended. To the Krath hive mind, it would look like the humans were breaking. "This seems like a strange strategy," Counselor Minith said. "We are actually winning now. Why would we pretend to lose?" "Because the Krath believe they are superior," Park explained. "They expect to win. When they see us retreating, they will believe their strategy is working. They will push harder, extend their lines further, chase us deeper into coalition space. And when they are fully extended, we spring the trap." The operation began slowly. Human ships engaged Krath forces and then retreated. Coalition commanders, who had been trained in human tactics, followed the plan, even though it felt wrong to abandon systems they could have held. Trust was required. Trust in the human strategists who had already achieved the impossible. Captain Beak led his squadron behind enemy lines. While the main forces retreated, his ships were doing the real work. They destroyed fuel depots. They severed communication lines. They planted false intelligence that made the Krath believe human forces were even weaker than they appeared. The Krath pursued. Their commanders, connected by the hive mind, shared a single thought: destroy the humans before they can cause more damage. Ships that should have been protecting supply lines were pulled forward to join the attack. Reserves were committed. The Krath fleet stretched across a dozen systems, focused entirely on a single goal. Lieutenant Choi had spent months perfecting her psychological warfare techniques. Now she deployed them on a massive scale. Her team broadcast messages directly into the Krath hive mind. Not false orders this time, but something more subtle: doubt, fear, confusion. What are they fighting for? The messages asked. Why do they continue to resist? What makes them different? For a species that had conquered through superior numbers and coordination, these questions were poison. The hive mind had never needed to ask why. It simply did. But now, facing an enemy that defied all expectations, the questions began to spread. Captain Beak was wounded during a raid on a Krath communication hub. His ship took heavy damage, and shrapnel tore through his left arm. But he refused evacuation until the mission was complete. When he finally returned to the Resolute, he had to be carried off his ship. Commander Park visited him in the medical bay. "That was reckless," she said. Beak grinned despite his pain. "It worked. Their communication network is shattered in 3 systems. I need you alive, Captain. You cannot fight if you are dead. I can fight as long as I can breathe." News of Beak's injury spread through both human and coalition forces. But instead of causing despair, it inspired something else. Stories circulated about the human captain who refused to quit, who completed his mission even while bleeding. Coalition soldiers began to understand what human determination really meant. Admiral Torvax took command of a Valoran strike force. For the first time in his 30-year career, he used the guerrilla tactics he had learned from the humans. His ships attacked supply convoys instead of battle fleets. They used deception instead of direct confrontation. It felt strange and uncomfortable. It also worked. The Krath offensive stalled. Their ships were running low on fuel. Their commanders were receiving contradictory information. Their perfect coordination was breaking down. Park called the final briefing. Officers from a dozen species attended, both in person and via holographic link. The map showed craft forces spread across 12 systems. Their supply lines stretched thin, their formations scattered. "They are exactly where we want them," Park said. "Tomorrow we attack. All forces, simultaneously, across every system." The scale of the operation was staggering. Over 400 coalition ships would strike at the same moment, coordinated by human communication systems. It was the largest offensive in 40 years of war. "This is everything," Admiral Torvax said quietly. "If this fails, we have nothing left." "It will not fail," Park replied. "The Krath have spent 40 years teaching you how to lose. Now it is time to teach them what humans do when they are cornered." The attack began at dawn, measured by Terminus Prime Standard Time. Human and coalition ships emerged from hiding across 12 star systems. They struck at isolated Krath units, destroyed supply depots, and cut communication lines. The Krath tried to respond, but their coordination was gone. Each unit fought alone, without the support of the hive mind. They were still dangerous individually, but they were no longer the unstoppable machine they had been. Battle raged for 3 days. Commander Park slept in her command chair, waking every few hours to adjust strategy. Lieutenant Choi worked until she collapsed, then got up and worked more. Captain Beak, his arm in a sling, commanded his squadron from a hospital bed. When it was over, the Krath had lost over 200 ships. Their offensive was broken. Their supply lines were in ruins. For the first time in 40 years, the Coalition had won a major campaign. Celebrations erupted across Coalition space. Species that had forgotten how to hope began to believe that victory was possible. The humans, who had arrived as primitive newcomers, were now heroes. But Park did not celebrate. She was studying new intelligence reports, analyzing Krath movements, preparing for the next phase. "They will not give up," she told Mivith. "This defeat will make them desperate. Desperate enemies are dangerous. What do you expect them to do? Something dramatic. Something that will change the war in one stroke." Park looked at the star map, her eyes finding the symbol for Terminus Prime. "They will try to destroy our leadership. To cut off the head and watch the body die." She was right. The Krath were already planning their response. The largest fleet in their history was assembling. Its target was the very heart of the Coalition. The final battle was coming. Humanity turns the tide. How humans altered the course of a losing war. Part 5. Victory and Legacy. The spy's report arrived at midnight. Commander Park read it 3 times, making sure she understood every detail. The Krath were assembling their largest fleet in history. 600 ships, including their massive command vessel. Their target was Terminus Prime, the station that served as the Coalition's political and military headquarters. "They want to end the war with one strike," she told her staff. "Destroy the leadership, break the Coalition, and watch the pieces fall apart." Admiral Torvax studied the numbers. "We cannot match that force. Even with everything we have, we are outnumbered. We do not need to match them. We need to outsmart them." The Krath plan was clever. They had sent false intelligence suggesting their fleet would attack a different system. Coalition forces were supposed to rush to defend it, leaving Terminus Prime vulnerable. It was exactly the kind of trap that had worked 100 times before, but the humans had their own spies, their own intelligence network. And they had something the Krath did not expect. They knew the trap was coming. Park gathered the combined human and Coalition command. The meeting room on Terminus Prime was crowded with officers from a dozen species. Outside the windows, the station floated in space, vulnerable and exposed. "We will let them believe their trap is working," Park announced. "We will send some forces to the false target. We will make Terminus Prime look defenseless. And when the Krath arrive, expecting easy victory, they will find us waiting. The preparations took 2 weeks. Ships gathered in hidden locations, powered down to avoid detection. Weapon platforms were concealed as civilian structures. The entire defense of Terminus Prime was invisible, waiting like a coiled spring. Captain Beak had recovered from his wounds. His arms still ached, but he refused to let anyone else lead the strike force. "This is the final battle," he told Commander Park. "I will not watch it from the sidelines." Lieutenant Choi had developed new psychological warfare techniques specifically for this engagement. Her systems were ready to flood the Krath hive mind with chaos at the crucial moment. "They will not know what is real and what is false," she said. "By the time they figure it out, it will be too late." Counselor Mevith watched the preparations with wonder. She had traveled to Earth seeking help for a dying alliance. Now she was watching that alliance prepare its greatest victory. Everything she had believed about humans, all her studies and theories, had proven true. "You knew this would work," she said to Park during a quiet moment. "From the very beginning, you knew." Park shook her head. "I hoped it would work. I believed in the plan. But knowing is different from hoping. We took a risk, Counselor. We took many risks. Any one of them could have failed, but they did not. No, they did not." The Krath fleet arrived at Terminus Prime on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. 600 ships emerged from hyperspace, expecting to find a defenseless target. Their commanders, linked by the hive mind, shared a moment of triumph. The war was about to end. Then the coalition fleet appeared. Ships emerged from behind moons, from inside asteroid fields, from dead-looking stations that suddenly came to life. 400 warships surrounded the Krath fleet, weapons already charging. Commander Park broadcast on all frequencies. "Krath fleet, you have entered a trap. Your supply lines are cut. Your communications are compromised. Surrender and your lives will be spared." The Krath did not surrender. They had never surrendered. They did not know how. Battle erupted across the space around Terminus Prime. It was the largest naval engagement in galactic history. Ships exploded like stars being born. Weapons fire created patterns of light that could be seen from nearby planets. Lieutenant Choi activated her systems. False signals flooded the Krath hive mind. For a moment, every Krath ship received different orders. Attack, retreat, hold position. The perfect coordination that made them deadly shattered into chaos. Captain Beak led his squadron straight at the Krath command vessel. It was suicide, or it should have been. But the command ship's escorts were confused, responding to phantom threats, unable to coordinate their defense. Beak's ships slipped through their formation like water through a broken dam. "Fire everything," Beak ordered. Missiles streaked toward the command vessel. Its shields held briefly, then collapsed. The explosions tore through the ship's hull, reaching the central chamber where the Krath commanders coordinated the hive mind. Across the battlefield, Krath ships stopped moving. Without the command vessel, without the central node of their hive mind, they were lost. Some continued fighting out of instinct. Others drifted, waiting for orders that would never come. The coalition fleet swept through them. It was not a battle anymore. It was cleanup. When it was over, less than 50 Krath ships had escaped. The rest were destroyed or captured. Terminus Prime was safe. The coalition had won. Admiral Tarvax found Commander Park standing alone on an observation deck, watching the wreckage drift past the station. He approached quietly and stood beside her. "We won," he said. "After 40 years, we won." Park nodded slowly. "Yes, you do not seem happy. I am thinking about the cost." She turned to face him. "How many died today? On both sides? This victory was necessary. I believe that. But it was also terrible. Torvax understood. He had fought for 30 years. He knew the weight that came with command, with sending others to die. That weight is the price of leadership, he said. Those who feel nothing should not be trusted with power. The news spread across the galaxy. The Krath had been broken. Their fleet was destroyed. Their command structure was in chaos. Coalition forces, inspired by the victory, began pushing back across every front. Within months, the Krath requested a ceasefire. It was the first time in their history they had asked for peace. Negotiations were difficult, but eventually a treaty was signed. The war was truly over. Humanity was elevated to senior partner in the coalition. Commander Park was promoted to Admiral, the first human to hold such a rank. Captain Beak was offered a desk job and refused, choosing instead to train the next generation of Special Operations soldiers. Lieutenant Choi became head of Coalition Intelligence, building new systems that would protect the Alliance for generations. A memorial was built on Terminus Prime, honoring all who had fallen in the war. Names from a dozen species were carved into stone that would last forever. Admiral Park visited it often, remembering those who had paid the ultimate price for victory. Counselor Mivith, now Ambassador Mivith, stood with her during one such visit. "Do you ever regret coming here?" she asked. "Joining a war that was not your own?" Park considered the question carefully. "We had no choice," she said finally. "Not really. When we learned about the coalition, about the Krath, about what was happening out here, we could not walk away. That is not who humans are. You could have waited, built your strength, prepared better defenses for when the Krath eventually reached Earth, and watched billions die while we did nothing." Park shook her head. "No, some prices are too high. Some choices are not really choices at all." Years later, on a coalition world far from Earth, an alien child asked her elder about the war. The elder was very old enough to remember the dark times before the humans came. "Were you scared?" the child asked. "We were terrified," the elder replied. "We had lost so much. So many worlds, so many friends. We had forgotten how to hope. What happened?" The elder smiled. "The humans came. They were young and strange, and fought in ways we did not understand. But they reminded us of something important." "What?" "That hope itself is a weapon. That the will to survive can overcome any odds. That sometimes the smallest flame can light the darkest night." The child thought about this. "Are humans still fighting?" "Humans are always fighting," the elder said. "Not just with weapons. They fight against hunger and disease and injustice. They fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. It is what they do. It is who they are." Far away, in the human city of Sol on the planet Earth, Admiral Una Park sat in her office reviewing star charts. New regions of space were opening up. New challenges waited. New adventures called. She smiled and began planning humanity's next great journey among the stars. The war was over, but humanity's story was just beginning.